intuitive side, right?
Yeah.
It takes, and I'm learning this personally with my own, like, what is intuition? Like, how does it work? Like, how do you lean and surrender into this feeling? So what was going through your mind when you had that experience where you felt a pull of sorts,
Hmm.
and what was the internal dialogue that you went through to then trust enough to follow that direction for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of resistance at the beginning because it was like I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anybody else. Like that's just not who I am. And so it was like this, like, am I going backwards by taking a role here? And there's something special in that surrender into leaning into what you feel is the bigger picture, right? And being a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's what othership was for me. It was like this, like, surrender into something that is clearly bigger than myself. And can I just be a piece of this grand vision of what's happening here, as opposed to it's all about Freddie, it's all about me. Like, I want to make everything about, like, for me, right? So it was, how can I contribute? And I think that that was such a big mindset shift for me. And there was many times where that other ego is coming out and just being like, what are you doing here? Like, go do your own thing, go do this. And then ultimately, like, that's the birth of soul expansion, because I do have that entrepreneur nature, but it didn't come from a place of like, this has to be mine and I have to do this. And I, like, all of those things that I had in the past. So to your question about like what was going on in my head, it was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of like, do I do this? Do I do that? And I think the main thing was finding the stillness so that I could find the answers a little bit easier. And, sometimes it was super clear, and then sometimes it wasn't as clear. So you have to, like, kind of take a couple steps until okay, I'll do it until this, I'll do it until that. And then just recently, I taught my last class there a couple months ago, and there were that it was an intel moment, and then just understanding that, okay, this is the end of this chapter, and being okay with that. And there's obviously, I miss it a lot, and I miss the community there and all that. And I always, go back and kind of touch base. But um, it was, yeah, it was until this moment. And I think having that in my head allowed me to take that big leap. Was like, okay, I'm going to give it this real go until something like this happens. So
Hmm.
yeah.
It reminds me so much of this documentary called, I think it was The Last Shaman or something like that. It was
Mm,
this gentleman who was viscerally depressed,
mm,
and he decides he needs to go to Peru in order to start working with, I guess, some of the shamans and the medicine in order to help cure his depression. And at the end of the movie, there's a beautiful point. I'm going to ruin this. Sorry, everybody. But there's a beautiful point that he says where, because he comes out of this, and he essentially had to engage with the practices and kind of come to his own realizations. But he had this beautiful point, which is, I'm not here to become anything. I'm here to be a very small part of something much bigger than myself,
mm.
which was tremendously, like, fascinating because, as you mentioned, with I suppose, the entrepreneurial mindset, it is this, at the start it does kind of feel as though you're like, this thing, I'm making this thing because I want it. But then slowly, maybe it's like through the erosion of the waves of the world, you come to this place of trying to figure out service. Like, how can
Mm,
I show up in a way that's useful
yeah.
for the world, and that the world needs, which is hard, like
Yeah.
very hard, because of the creative aspect, the vanity, the
Yeah.
egotism that is involved with entrepreneurship.
Totally.